Today, today's webinar is gonna explain the Chicago Park District Concessions Program and how to operate a concessions on Park District property. My name is Stephanie Hatch, and I actually work for UCG Associates. We manage the concessions program for the Chicago Park District. So I don't work directly for the Park District, but I do work for the management company that manages the concessions program. So if we'll move the slides forward, we'll do an introduction. We do have someone on the line from the Park District, CJ Creegans.
Good morning. I recently got a new last name. My name is CJ Grockins. I do work for the Chicago Park District. I'm the Deputy Director of Revenue, and I oversee the contract that we have with UCG to run this concession program. So, Stephanie, thank you for presenting today, and big thanks to BACP for helping us out to put this on.
Thank you, CJ. One more slide. Okay, and then I have the contact information for UCG associates on the screen, and I will give more information and phone numbers as we go along with this presentation. So again, UCG Associates, we are the management company that manages the concessions program for the Chicago Park District. And what that means is we manage the day-to-day operations. We advertise whenever there's an opportunity or spaces at Park District property for concessions to operate. We do that each year, starting in October. We also negotiate the leases and negotiate the rents for the concessionaires that operate on Park District property. And as the day-to-day operations, we answer questions, we help with new startups, concessionaires, and then if there's any issues that comes up along the way, whether that's utilities or customers or security, we help you on a day-to-day basis from the beginning to the end of the season. Next. So the goal of the concessions program, the goal of the program is to develop a relationship with the community and with the parks that the concessionaires operate in. So it's not just setting up a concession at a park or beach location. It is developing a relationship with the community, with the park supervisor, with the patrons of that park or beach location. It's also presenting and offering a good, healthy option for the people that operate at the park or at the beach location, and it's offering the product or the service at an affordable price. And so when we go into a community or a beach location, we take all these things into consideration. Currently, we have between 190 and 200 concessions locations that will operate during the season, during the upcoming season in a beach or a park location. And these concessionaires consist of restaurants, food and beverage, carts, containers, or trailers. We have retail services like beach chair rentals and cabana rentals. We have bike rental businesses. We have different services. We have a massage service at one of our locations. We have water recreations, and we also work with some of the vending that you'll find inside the field houses of the different park locations. So we have a large variety. These concessions operate in different facilities. So again, I mentioned a park facility or a beach location. The types range from a small area that a cart might operate in to one of our larger concessions that might operate out of a park district building. Theater on the Lake comes to mind. That's one of the larger locations. But if you look here along the lakefront, we also have beach houses. And so we have concessionaires that operate from the north to the south, all up and down the lakefront at different beach houses. So a lot of different opportunities and different varieties. And the Park District and UCG, we're always looking for people to come and present different ideas and different and unique concepts. So we're always looking for something different and unique. The focus area park. So we also have a program that is called the Focus Area Parks, and it focuses in on community area programs that that need to be stimulated as far as the businesses in those communities and area. So it's predominantly the south and west side of Chicago. And what happens is concessionaires that operate at focus area parks in a lot of instances might get a discount on some of the fees that are that have to be paid to operate in those locations. And the goal is to increase the amenities and increase some of the concessionaires in parks where we typically don't have a lot of the amenities or a lot of the concessionaires that would operate. So this is to increase the number of concessionaires that would operate all through the city. Another program that is that we're affiliated with is the Good Food Program. And the Good Food Program is the Park District participates in this good food for purchasing and for prioritizing and purchasing of good food items. And so there are 4 or 5 main values to the Good Food Program. And the first one would be to buy locally. So that's something that's definitely a positive thing that we try to get concessionaires to do. To be environmental sustainable. As far as the products that you utilize in your restaurants or in your concessions. Valued workforce, the employees, how the employees are treated, and definitely sourcing employees from the community that you have your concessions, animal welfare, and then nutrition. And healthy and nutritional items are always something that we look to ask concessionaires to offer in their concessions locations. So to incorporate the good food purchasing practices into the concessions program and assist in making good food more widely available, promotes healthier eating habits and supports the local economy. So that's the goal of the program, and the Park District again is part of the program and promotes it within their concessions program. Another program or priority is sustainable products. And it's very important to mention that the Park District is a recreation agency and a conservation organization. And so the single-use plastics that cause litter and can wind up in Lake Michigan. So these single-use plastics, straws might be an example, can't be recycled once in the environment. They never disappear. And so that's something that we've really tried to stray away from with our concessionaires. Styrofoam products are also not allowed, and glass products are not allowed on the beaches. So again, products that stay in the environment and can cause litter and that do not go away are products that the concessionaires are not allowed to use in certain instances or asked not to use. And then finally, the Good Neighbor Program. And so as a concessionaire with the Park District expects you to be a good neighbor and to maintain or improve the park that you would go into or the beach location. And so what does that mean? That means that a concessionaire will not use flashing lights, strobe lights. So that's something that would cause the people in the environment to get upset. That you won't operate any loud speaking TV or radio, CD players, or anything producing sound that can be heard outside of your footprint or your space that you will be allowed in. So nothing that will go out into the community and cause noise pollution. You would also not be permitted to do anything outside of your footprint, outside of your concession space that would cause litter or cause the people in the environment of the community to complain or be upset. So again, I mean, basically the Good Neighbor program is just exactly what it says. It's that whatever park or community that you operate in, that you be an asset and that you would be a good neighbor. Okay, so the application process. All applications are to be submitted online by going to www.parkconcessions.com and clicking on online application. And so it's real important that I mention that the applications must be done online. We don't accept written applications. Acknowledgement of the application receipt will be sent to the applicant's email address within 24 hours. And actually, if you go on the website and you start filling out the application, you receive a application number. And so if you can't complete it all at one time, you're able to take that number and go back to the application and complete the application. Or if you want to upload information, you can do that as well. Important to mention, when you are going online to fill out an application, using your phone is not the best way to do it. In fact, I don't think you can complete an application on a cell phone. You really do need to have a laptop or go to a desktop or some other mode of filling out the application, but I would not suggest using your phone. So that's important. Submitting an application does not guarantee that the applicant will be recommended for award. So once you submit your application and you get your number, you definitely have to wait to get feedback for next steps. That doesn't mean that you automatically have a location or you're automatically going to get a permit for the location. It means that the application is submitted and we're starting the application process. Submitting an application does not grant you authorization to operate a concessions on Park District property. So just reiterating that, once you do go online and fill out an application, please wait for next steps. The application process. Applications received by the application due date and time will be reviewed by UCG. Each year, we post what is called the notice of availability. And so the notice of availability is an updated application with available locations for the upcoming season. And this happens by, I would say, the third week of October each year. The applications are then given a due date, and the due date, we usually give it 6 weeks before the actual applications are due. If you do this process during that time and turn the applications in at the due date, those applications are considered on time. We do not close the application process, so you can fill out an application at any time, but the time where the available list of locations is up to date and the information is correct and is during that time when we have the notice of availability open and we have the time that we ask that you turn in the applications. Again, we do not close it. You can go to the site and fill out an application at any time. But after the due date, the applications are considered late. And so we go through the applications that are submitted on time first. And then we go to the applications that were submitted after the due date. So I just want to make that point. Any application received after the due date and time may be considered on an as-needed basis. And so if you do turn an application in after the due date and it's for a park that we don't have a concessionaire and we didn't get a lot of people that were interested, then that's an application that we would take the time and pull and look at probably sooner than a location where we receive tons and tons and tons of applications for that park. And so those definitely, the ones that were turned in by the due date, will be looked at first. UCG will process and review complete applications according to application review criteria, which I will go through. And UCG will discuss and negotiate business terms with the applicant during the review process. So during our review process, which involves going through the application, it involves asking the applicant to come into the office to have an interview with us, to explain their business, to show us pictures of the cart or the unit that they would operate out of, and to give us a little background on if they're a new startup or if they already have an existing business and how long they've had that business. So we go through a whole interviewing process before we get to the point of talking about, what are the business terms and negotiating the rent and some of the other fees that have to be paid. The application review criteria. So what are we looking for when we're looking at the application? Obviously, we look for the completeness of the application. So it's important that when you're filling out your application, you give us as much information as possible. If there are pictures that can be uploaded, if there's information about how you got started, all that information should be included in your application. We look at the quality, creativity, and innovative nature of the proposed concessions. We look at where you want to operate. Will that enhance the park recreation activity or the park or beach location where you are proposing to operate? We look at consistent with planned usage of the proposed location. So if we are looking at a location that we need water recreation or we need a different service and you're proposing a food and beverage for that location, then that's not a good mix because that's not what we feel like this park or location needs. So it's important that we look at the concept and then we look at the location to see if it's a good mix. Consistent with the goals of the concessions program and the plan. And so I mentioned earlier, the goal of the concessions program utmost is to offer the patrons the best thing or a service that's needed in at their park and in their community. How concessions adds to the diversity of the park district concessions activities. And then concessions is environmentally conscious and uses sustainable methods. And those are some of the sustainable products that I mentioned before. And I mean, as far as being environmentally conscious, always making sure that if you're operating in that park and there's clutter or cleanliness issues, that you are part of the solution to help keep the location as clean as possible. So this slide just shows an example of when we do post the notice of availability in October, we post a couple different locations that are featured at the time. And that means that these locations would be available. It gives people an idea of where the location is, what is around the location, and what could be considered a good concession for this location. And in the notice of availability each year, I believe we post 4 to 5 typically of these locations that are considered, focus locations. So again, the location, the Grant Park South End, we currently have someone operating this season. But last year when we posted the notice of availability, this is just a sample or example of what we posted. And so we had a concessionaire see this and decided to apply for this location And so they ended up getting awarded the location. And then I have one more example. This is another example of what you'll see in the notice of availability. So we try to highlight different locations and tell you what goes on in those different locations as far as activities that you might encounter. And in this example, we actually suggested a food truck because that's what fit in the space. And so that's some of the other information we'll give you to let you know what would be a good idea for a particular park or location and what would. Okay, so I want to take a couple minutes to go through some frequently asked questions, and we will definitely have time at the end of the presentation to answer questions. But these are the questions that come up most often, so I want to go through them. I think it'll help because it'll probably answer some questions that people have now, and then again we can reiterate or answer more questions later. So the first question is, what if I would like to operate or concessions from a location that is not included in the list of available locations? So when you are looking online and looking at our list of available locations, we put as many locations as we possibly can. But there are, I believe, 600 parks and beaches and locations that the Chicago Park District has. And so we can't list every single location. And so what we do is we do have some general language on there that says South region or North region. And so if you don't see a park or location that you're interested in and you put a general region, then we have our information or our contact information in on the site. You can always call us and say, I'm looking for a particular park. It's a North Side park. I don't see it on the list, and we'll instruct you where to go from there. More than likely, we'll have you put the North Side on there, and then we'll help on our end to write in the park or the particular location that you're looking for. So we're always available for questions. Can I submit my application for more than one location? Absolutely. In fact, if you look at the application, there are spaces for 5 different selections. We do ask that you put them in the order of your interest. And so the first space, we ask that you put the location that you want the most, if you could get it, and then go down from there. And so what we do is, if these locations are available, we try to give your first choice. But if your first choice is not available, then we'll talk through your other selections. But you will have a chance to make 5 different choices that's available on the application. What if I don't have a specific park in mind for my proposed concession operation? If you don't have a specific park in mind, I'm going to go back to the answer from the first question. If you put down, I'm looking for North Side, or I'm looking for South Side, or downtown area, lakefront area, if you call us and give us that information, or if you select a general region on the available list, we can work from there. So it's always a good idea to call or reach out to our office if you have questions, or if you need to give us additional information, and we will tell you how to do that. What are the fees and costs to operate a concessions? So there are a couple fees that are involved in operating the concessions. And the one thing before I go into the fees, I want to mention this is a program where it's not just a matter of getting a permit or paying for a permit. You go into an agreement with the park district, you sign an agreement, and so you do have a base fee or rent that you pay to operate on park district property. So it's a whole program that we try to get the concessionaires to operate at a location for the entire season. And the season typically is from Memorial Day at least until Labor Day. It could go longer, but that's the typical amount of time for the season. So the first fee that I want to mention is a base fee or rent that you'll have to pay to operate on Park District property. And the fees are not set in the sense that everybody pays the same amount. They vary. It depends on where you're operating, what you're operating out of. Someone who's operating out of a cart would not pay the same amount as someone that would be operating from a beach house or from a larger location, a kiosk or a trailer. So a lot of things go into determining the rent and the base fee. And that's something we work with the concessionaire. When you apply, we go through that with you and we work with you. Typically, percentage wise, we try to look at what we think a concessionaire could do at a location. And from that amount, in the past, we've looked at 15% of that as being your rent. That's changing in some instances moving forward. And then sometimes, depending on if it's a location that needs some work and you're willing to put an investment into it and put money into it, that percentage could change. But as a rule, we try to use 15% of what we think could be generated in sales to develop a rent for a location. So in that instance, if we talk with you and we start negotiating with you and you think that you could do $10,000 between Memorial Day and Labor Day at a location, then your rent would typically be $1,500, and that would be for the whole season. You would have a license fee or permit. So you would be given a permit or a license that you would keep at the location for the season. So if someone came by, a police officer or someone from the park district or anyone came by, this would prove that you are a licensed vendor, that you were assigned to this location, and you shouldn't have a problem because you have paid to be there. In most instances, the licenses are about $100, $100 to $150, depending on how large your operation is. For our first time concessionaires, in a lot of the instances, you do have to put down a security deposit, almost like if you were renting an apartment. And the security deposit is something that if some damage is done to the park or to the location that you're operating in, just like an apartment, that's what the security deposit would be used for. If you operate a season, a couple seasons at your location, there's no problems, there's no damage, and you decide that you don't want to continue to operate with the park district, then your security deposit is returned to you. One important fee, and this is something that would not be charged by us, but it is a responsibility of every concessionaire that's operating on park district property to get insurance. So you would be responsible to have liability insurance. We would give you the information that you would need it to take to your insurance company. In a lot of instances, we have some insurance companies that other concessionaires work with, and so we could give you a name or an agent to talk to that understands the type of insurance that is needed to operate your concessions. But you could not get your permit and operate on Park District property without having insurance. And then some of the other fees are, everyone wouldn't pay these fees, but it would depend on where you operate. And that would be a utility fee. So if you're in a location that has some type of utility, say you're at a location and there's power and you're able to tap into the power, you'd have to pay a fee to operate, to use the power at that location, or if there's water. And then if you are at a location that you're able to sell liquor, and we have a couple of those, then there would be some additional fees that would be connected with selling liquor and making sure that you had all the permits and certificates and licenses that were associated with selling liquor. Okay, so that's just a general kind of outline on some of the fees and costs to operate. Obviously, as a concessionaire, you would have costs to keep up your concessions location, keep up your cart, your kiosk. It would be your responsibility to make sure that it looked good, that you had signage representing the name of your company, that we also require that you post your menu items, you post the cost of your menu items. So there are a couple things that we require that as a owner, as a concessionaire, you would also have. What is the concession season and operating schedule for a concession? I mentioned the typical season is Memorial Day to Labor Day. When we do agreements with concessionaires, we usually do them through October 31st. And so, weather permitting, after Labor Day, if the weather is nice, then the concessionaire could continue to operate depending on what park or beach location they operate, they're located. Most of the beaches, they start to, as the weather changes, especially when the kids go back to school, you don't have as many people, but a lot of the neighborhood parks still have activities and people come out, especially during the weekend. And so the concessionaire could continue to operate. We do have some concessionaires that operate year round, and that would be something that we would discuss during the interviewing process with you. If it's a location that you could operate year round, you were indoors, then that would be something that we talk about prior to you starting your agreement. As far as the days of the week and the hours, a lot of that really depends on the location. Some locations are extremely busy on weekends, and so you might be a concessionaire that would like to operate on in the weekends, or some locations have sporting events, soccer, baseball during the season, and so you would like to operate during the times of the games. That would be something that we would discuss ahead of time, and make sure that you are there and operating when they're having these activities. It's okay with the park supervisor. And then we would submit the information, your hours of operation, to the park district. But the parks are typically open from 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. So you would operate sometime during when the parks are open. You can't operate when the parks are not open. So that's important to mention. But whenever the parks are open, you really have the opportunity to operate at all times whenever you like. Whenever we find out that there are a lot of activities at the park and it's the best time to operate for that location. When should I start purchasing furniture, fixtures, or equipment, or anything else that I need for my concessions, like the signage I talked about? I think it's important that you first talk with us, go through the interviewing process, and just find out that you actually have an agreement, that you have the gig before you start purchasing a lot of items. So that's important. One thing with the food and beverage concessions, you also have to have your sanitation certification. And so if you don't already have it, that's something that I believe you can get online, or you can go to some of the junior colleges, and there are a couple of different ways to get that. But it costs an amount of money. I don't think it's a large amount of money, but it does cost. And so before you get insurance or sanitation certificate, or if you need to get signage, before you do anything, it's important that it's confirmed that you have your location, you do have your agreement with the park district, and then you start moving forward. So that's important to make sure. What if I execute a concessions permit agreement, start my preparation to get ready by the opening date, and then at some point in the process, I encounter delays or problems? And this happens all the time. We really push to have, especially on the lakefront, everybody ready and open for Memorial Day weekend. But especially with new startups, sometimes that doesn't happen. And so our job at UCG is to work with you, to work through the kinks, to keep the park district posted on everything that's going on, and to get a date of when you will open. So we know that things happen. You're waiting on delivery of equipment, and it's coming from a faraway place, or you're still hiring your staff for the summer, whatever the case may be. But it's important that you communicate with our office. Let us know what's going on so we can alert the park district as to when your opening day would be. But again, especially at the lakefront, we really do push to have everyone open by Memorial Day weekend. If my concessions involves a sale of food and beverage, what are the health and sanitation requirements? And I think I just mentioned that you would be required to have a manager or someone who is going to be on site at the location with their food sanitation certificate. So it would have to be up to date and somewhere at the location that when the inspectors came around or when you got your inspection, that we would be able to see it, and then we would ask for a copy of it in our office. Every food and beverage location will receive at least one inspection during the season. We hire a company that comes in. We actually have this going on right now. It happens at the beginning of the season. The inspector goes out and does an inspection at the location, and we give feedback. And then if there's something that needs to be fixed or something that needs to be tweaked or changed, that takes place at that time, and we give you the feedback. And so every food and beverage location would receive at least one inspection by a sanitation inspector that we hire to come out. Unless you have packaged items that you're not making anything on site, everything is packaged, it might be candy or just really small items, then we'd have to see if you really need the inspection. But more than likely, especially new concessionaires coming into the program, you will receive a sanitation inspection. What licenses, certificates, and permits are required to operate a concession? Well, I did mention that as part of signing your agreement and paying your fees, you would receive a permit or your license to operate on Park District property. So that's something that you get from our office. You'd have to have that on site at the location at all times and visible so it could be seen by whoever that would come by and would be looking to make sure that you're legitimate. So that's important. Some other licenses that might be needed would be if you are a location that does serve liquor, then you would need everything that is appropriate and needed to serve liquor at your location. So that would be looked for as well. Just some additional things as far as if you end up operating out of a park district building, or you end up operating out of a location that needs work and you have to put some capital into it or do some construction, the park district has a permitting process called the access permitting process. And that's a process that we would help you navigate through to do any kind of construction, painting, anything on park district property or to their buildings that needs to take place. You can't just change their building or do any type of construction on park district property. You'd have to go through this access permit process and get that permit. And again, UCG would assist you in understanding and navigating that process. Am I responsible for maintenance and repairs to my concessions facility? Yes. All concessionaires are responsible for maintenance to their facility. In your agreement, we have a clause or sentence that is called as is. And so all concessions, whenever you are awarded a concessions location, you get the location as is. And so at that point, it is up to the concessionaire to repair, paint, or if there's something that needs to be done or fixed in the location. Once you're awarded the space, then it's your responsibility to do that. So we would expect you to keep it fresh, up to date, looking good, looking appealing to customers, to the patrons of the parks and the beaches. And that would be your responsibility. And we also really take pride in the fact that the concessionaires we select take pride in their business and want to keep them up to date and looking good each season. Okay, and then the final thing I want to talk about, and it's on the screen, is Chicago Park District sponsorship agreements, and we have 3 agreements that concessionaires have to adhere to, and the agreements are they're actually sponsorships. One is with Coke, and so if you are a food and beverage concessionaire, you would have to carry Coke products, and we have a sponsorship with Coke. We make the connection or help you make the connection with the Coke representative, so that you could be serviced with the Coke product. But any beverage that is sold at your location needs to be a Coke product, unless it's a specialty drink that you're making and that was pre-approved prior to you getting out in the parks or the beaches and operating. And so I believe, just to give you an example, Coke, 7-Up, Dasani water. I know Gatorade is not a Coke product. I think it's Powerade. So anything that's a Coke product would have to be the items that you sell if you operate on Park District property with your permit. The other sponsorship is Vienna beef. So if you are selling hot dogs or any product that Vienna beef has, Polish sausages, then you would have to work with Vienna beef, and it would have to be a Vienna beef product. And then finally, we have an ice cream sponsorship with Joe and Ross, and we have a representative that communicates with the concessionaire. We help make the connection with the concessionaire and with the representative. And so the ice cream products that you would sell at your location, you would have to purchase from Joe and Ross. When you go on the websites currently, this is what you would see. And one of the, so you see apply online on one side, and the other side is view list of available locations. So I'm told that it is easier to actually view the list of available locations first, then go to the side where you're going to apply, because then you get an idea of what locations are available. And again, this list is updated at the end of October each year when we start the process. And so if you were to go on there now, a lot of locations have already been awarded because we've started the season already. It's June. Most of the concessionaires that were selected from the process last year are out and operating. But we always encourage people still to go on the site if there's a possibility, if it's not a location that everybody wanted, and there's a possibility that it could be open. We definitely are open to speaking with a concessionaire, looking at an application, and doing an evaluation. But I suggest the easier way to do it, again, is to view the available locations, then go to the application so you can put in the locations that you're interested in. And so then the instructions for the notice of availability, that's listed on the screen, and then a financial worksheet, which depending on the location, for a lot of carts, a small location, that's not necessary. But if you have a location where you think you're going to do more than $20,000, between 20,000 and 200,000, we encourage people to look at the financial worksheet and to think about, well, what are going to be my costs to operate this concession? How much money do you think I can make? And so then we also ask that you do that exercise and submit that information with your application. Next slide. Okay. This concludes the formalized information that I have. And I am open for questions.
All right, thank you very much, Stephanie. Let me help you with some questions from the chat box.
Thank you.
First, I can answer this one. Is this webinar recorded and available after today? Yes, it is. We are currently being recorded, and this will be up most likely Monday. In like 2 days, Monday, 3 days, Monday. So you can look out for it then. Next up, is it correct that the permit given by CPD is in place of the normal business license from Chicago Business Services? If you operate in a public park, you don't need a regular business license from City of Chicago?
So you do need the permit to operate. I don't think it's absolutely necessary to have the business license. No. You do need the license of the permit from our office though to operate on Park District property, correct?
Does this apply for a mobile cigar lounge? And which license would I need to apply for?
So there's no smoking on the Park District property.
Oh,
So I don't
Stephanie,
know.
sorry, let me
Yes.
jump in on that one.
Okay.
Smoking is very limited on Park District property. And I've been looking at things since that question popped up in the chat. I don't have the definitive answer, but I'm almost certain we would not allow a mobile cigar lounge on park property. Charles, if you want to send me a private message with your email, I can follow up with you after.
Thank you, CJ.
Great. Let's see. Can you apply if you only have a peddler's license?
So you can apply, but it's important to mention again that you can't operate on Park District property with only a peddler's license. So it's fine because I know that with the peddler's license, you can, operate on the street or in other locations. So in fact, we encourage you to apply. But you have to apply because you cannot operate on Park District property with the peddler's license only. That won't suffice. So
Thank
yes,
you.
we encourage you to apply.
Can you list packaging that is acceptable?
Well, styrofoam is not. So when you mean packaging, I guess.
So this person, yeah, I make cookies and I have parchment pouches, but it sounds like I need to upgrade.
Plastic. No, no plastic. No plastic. I mean, I don't know if the parchment pouches are plastic or styrofoam, but that's not gonna work. So I would say that I wouldn't have them in that type of packaging. Because we end up, obviously, when you sell the product to the customers, they end up, throwing away the packaging at the location, at the parks, and a lot of the things that are biodegradable end up staying like at the park, in the water. They end up going all over the place. So that's important. We're operating outside. So yeah, that we're kind of a stickler about that.
Do you allow vending machines? And if so, can they stay year round?
So I mean, CJ, did you want to mention about the anything? Okay.
We have a district-wide vending machine program. So we are expecting to put out a RFP likely in 2026 for vending machines. So keep an eye on that and check the Park District website for more information. If you're talking about non-food and beverage items, I do know there's a couple of those that have gone through the program under Stephanie, but for typical food and beverage vending, that's a completely separate RFP through our RFP process.
All right.
Thank you.
How do we handle charging sales tax?
Yeah. So, well, so you need to charge sales tax, but that's not something that we are, we say is mandatory. I mean, so we don't monitor that. We know that in the city of Chicago, depending on where you're operating, it's I think 10.75% in downtown up to maybe 11.5% or so. So it's higher. When the concessionaires report sales to us and they report sales on a monthly basis. So we do get sales information from concessionaires, but we ask that they take the sales tax out of the numbers that they report to us first. And so whatever, communication you might have with your tax person when you're filing your taxes, that's something that is a concessionaire's responsibility. And so we actually get sales information minus sales tax. If that helps.
Thank you. Can there be multiple concessions at a single park location?
So, I would say yes and no. It really depends on the concepts, and it depends on the community and the park district and the park supervisor. Some locations are large enough, some parks are large enough to sustain maybe one or two vendors of the same concept, one or two food and beverage vendors, and some locations are not. We're very careful not to put multiple concessionaires in a location that's selling the same items. Yeah, and so they take sales from each other or they cannibalize sales from each other. And variety is very important. And the other thing is the park supervisor and the people that manage the parks. If there are parks that are large and have a lot of space, but if they want to maintain only 3 or 4 vendors, so as to not have too many of the same vendors or to clean up environment so it's not cluttered or it's not like it's not too many vendors. It's a lot of things that we take into consideration on that. So I would say it depends on the size of the location of the park. It depends on the concept and the variety, because again, we don't want to have it where nobody makes any money because we have so many vendors with the same product in the same area, and it just gets to be a market fest. That's not really what we're trying to do in the program. So I would say the answer to that is yes and no, depending on the location, the size, and the concept.
Thank you. Do you offer carts to rent?
No, we do not. Good idea, but we don't offer cars to rent. But we do help as a resource if we know of a concessionaire that is moving to maybe coming from a cart and maybe they're going to do a kiosk or they're moving into a container or location, and we know that they're selling or renting. We will share that information with the concessionaire, but that's not something that's posted on our site currently. And so that's not, a resource that we advertise. We do everything we can when we find out about the information to assist, but that's not something that we advertise now.
Can you do competition or tournament events that pay out cash prizes to park visitors?
CJ, did you want to answer that?
Yeah. Well, first of all, sporting events would not fall under the concession program. You would likely need a different type of permit. You can get permit 101 information at chicagoparkdistrict.com to see what sort of permit would make sense to you for the type of event you're doing. And as far as the rules on cash prizes, I think that would be a question for your financial advisor in terms of what is and is not allowed legally. The park district doesn't have any particular rules about cash prizes as long as you're following city, state ordinances.
Great. How do I know which locations offer water and electricity?
Actually, that information is not posted in the NOA. And so, you're really gonna have to communicate with us and ask us that. So when we post the available locations, I think we have if there's a restroom available at the park or at the location and what concept we're looking for. We also have, I believe, the unit that we're looking for. So if we are looking for a food truck, container, cart, that would fit in the space, we'll share that information. Whether there's utilities at the space or not, that's not posted on the NOA, and so that's something that you would have to reach out to our office, and you would have to ask one of the people from the office. The other thing is when you are called in for the interview process, we take about a good hour with each person that's called in for an interview, and so we answer questions about utilities at particular spaces, and they're limited. They are. I'm gonna be very honest. There's a very limited amount of power and water that is available. So a lot of times, especially with carts or with smaller units, that's something that you're gonna have to provide. But to get back to answer your question, the information about utilities is something that is answered by communicating with us in our office, and that's talked about during the interview.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Somebody just asked, can you repeat the website to search for sports related permits? And CJ, I see you put the website in there. Thank you. Let's see. Do you consider house-made specialty beverages like smoothies and juice and house-made fruit sorbets / ice creams as undesirable products?
Wait,
Like
undesirable?
competition against the sponsors they added?
So, no. So the specialty drinks, they're considered during the interview process, and they are not against the sponsors. So a lot of people do smoothies and different drinks. So that would be that would be considered differently, and that would be okay. That would be acceptable if approved for the location and the menu and concept. That would be all right.
You. Can one license cover multiple park locations, or do I need separate permits for each site?
So you would end up getting separate permits for each site. So, but I do want to say that if you are new coming to the program, most times we don't do multiple sites for new concessionaires. We want to take the time to get to know you. We want you to take the time to get to know the program and operating with the park district. So if you are new coming on board, more than likely you would only get awarded one site. But to answer your question, if you have multiple sites, you will have to pay for a permit for each site.
You. Are there special considerations for home-based food businesses when applying for a park permit?
Well, let me say this. I don't know if I would say special considerations. We do require that if you are cooking a product and bringing it to the location to sell, that you utilize a shared food kitchen, a restaurant, an approved location that from the health department, that you have certification to use it as a kitchen to make product and sell. So you can't, that's part of the interviewing process as well. And that's one of our main questions. So we usually don't recommend someone who's cooking a product at their personal residence, just in the kitchen or whatever, and bringing it out to, and packaging it themselves and taking it out to sell. So
You.
you'd have to, use a shared kitchen, restaurant, or another approved location.
Are there structure protection for non-food vending machines?
Structure protection?
Yeah, I'm not sure I
What
understand that
means.
question.
Yeah.
That person,
Ah.
maybe try to rephrase that. Next question, what are the typical fees for revenue sharing models when selling on park property?
Okay, so this is what I talked about early on, and they vary depending on the unit you're selling, the concept, where you're located. If this involves you putting capital into the location to improve the location or get it up to speed. But what we typically do, just when we start the interviewing process, we look at what a concessionaire thinks they can do during the season at the location. So if you're at a location where you think you could do about $10,000 during the season, and the season is about, we'll say 100 days, 105 days from Memorial Day to Labor Day, and you think you can do $10,000, what has been typical in the past is that your rent would be based on about 15% of that. So you would owe 1,500 for the season. That's the rent. About 15% of what we project that you could do in sales at that location.
You? Are there lower rates or financial assistance for minority-owned, women-owned, or disability caregiver-led businesses?
So I would say that I mentioned earlier, and this is more with the location of where you would operate. We do have the focused program, depending on if you would select a park or would like to operate in a park in on the south side or the west side of Chicago, or in a community where there are not a lot of amenities, and we don't have a concessions in the area. And so we have a list of parks that are part of the focus park, and concessionaires that operate at these parks, the fees tend to be lower than some of the regular fees. Other than that, we currently don't have any other programs or grant programs. We did in 2002, so it's been a while. And that was an alfresco grant that was something that was connected with the park district back in 2002. So we haven't had that for a while. So we currently do not have any other programs.
Thank you. If you have a food trailer, are you allowed to prepare food in the trailer instead of a shared kitchen?
Yes. Yes. So we have concessionaires with trailers. And the trailers have been inspected by our inspectors. And so the trailers have what is needed: water, the power source, just to make sure that the hookup is done properly, and you are allowed to cook in the trailers.
Can I use generators or are there electricity hookups available in some parks?
So I would say you can use a generator. The electricity hookups are very limited. I would say that that's the one thing when it comes to operating outside, folks, and in parks. Not a lot of electric hookups, not a lot of power hookups. And so a lot of concessionaires work with generators or propane.
Thank you. There was a recent Chicago Park District press release about a new Chicago ordinance talking about BACP enforcing licensing in parks, but I can't find that ordinance or what it is really about.
Yeah, I'll take that
I-
one.
okay.
Eric, thanks for that question. Yeah, there was a recent change to the Chicago ordinance. We are partnering with BACP for the enforcement branch of their division to enforce licensing on Park District property. So if you are on Park District property and you're operating without a Park District permit, BACP enforcement is legally allowed now with this ordinance change to issue you a citation for that, in addition to, of course, police enforcement out there as well. So it's just another mechanism for us to be able to protect our process and make sure that everybody is licensed and getting all this health service sanitation that Stephanie's been talking about.
All right. I see a question about vending machines, but I think you mentioned earlier that it's different from this program.
It is.
Okay.
And so I think the person put in the chat, I'm looking, that their question had to do with if the vending machines were outside, would there be structural protection provided against the weather? And I mean, I think you kind of talked about the vending machines.
Right, yeah. For any concession that is operating on property, regardless, a vending machine, a cart, a trailer, the concessionaire themselves are responsible for securing that equipment. So we would not be providing structural protection for anything that your business needs. You would be responsible for doing that. And what we would do is review the structures you're putting on our property to ensure that they are safe for public property.
Okay.
Thank you. Are there requirements for signage, branding, or size limits for setup areas?
So we do have requirements of what the signage should look like, as far as how you advertise your branding. Size limits would really depend on the location and the setup area and your footprint. So once you do get an agreement and we move forward, that's discussed more. At the beginning of each season, we have a season kickoff meeting where we go into detail as far as the rules and regulations and requirements. And so all that is discussed. But as far as your setup, and the size of your signage and how you advertise your branding really depends on the amount of space you have and where you're located. But to answer the question, yes, there are requirements.
Thank you.
Juliet has put her
Are there
information.
special requirements for packaging, allergens, or labeling when selling snacks or sweets?
We don't have anything that is, I believe, in our agreement, but we do definitely encourage the concessionaires to label items. Absolutely. I mean, you're insured, but we, again, going back to being a good neighbor and a good steward, if you are offering a product and it has gluten or it has something in it, or if it doesn't, I mean, it's important that you advertise and you give that information to the public. We definitely don't want anyone to get sick. We just the opposite. We want it to be a very good experience that we're offering to the community, and that they'll want the concessionaire to continue to come back and operate there. And so yeah, we would definitely suggest that and ask that you do that.
Yeah, I would add on, there is a food code that regulates the sale
Yeah.
of food throughout Illinois. It's actually Illinois, it's a state statute. So I would look to that for any specific questions that a concessionaire has about labeling and allergens.
All right. Do you need 1 or 2 health manager certificates to apply?
No, one is fine. Usually what we find is that when a concessionaire applies, the owner would have the certificate. But we do say if you are a larger operation and you're gonna have more than the owner, whoever is going to be the person that is gonna operate the concession and be at the stand is the person that we would like to have the sanitation certificate.
Right. Um, is there a vendor directory or list where I can network or be referred for other events or locations?
Um, Currently, it's not. We're updating the website with different resources. So I don't know if the information, if we're looking to provide information about other events. I'm not sure if by other events they mean like farmers markets or different festivals, because that information we would not provide. But I guess as far as resources, community resources and resources about our program, we're in the process of updating that information.
Thank you. Are concessions allowed to sell branded merchandise like custom cups, tote bags, or themed accessories alongside food items?
Yeah, so that's something that we would have to look at and it would have to be approved. I'm not saying that it can't happen and it wouldn't happen, but we would really look at what you're offering. If it's something that ties in together, then that's something that could be considered. But if it's two completely different businesses, we would have to look at that and consider it at the locations.
Is there a resident requirement to be a concessionaire?
No, there is no resident requirement.
And then everybody, turn your attention to the webinar chat. CJ just added a website for resources there. It looks like the questions are dying down. We'll give it another minute or two.
While we're waiting for if we get any other questions, I just want to reiterate there are, I believe, 600 parks and beaches in the city. So we're always looking for people that want to operate in the neighborhood where they live, in their community, in different places in the city. We get tons and tons of applications for the lakefront. It happens all the time. People tend to gravitate and so there are a very limited amount of, space and permits we can give out for the same concepts. And so we're always looking for unique and different concepts and people that are interested in, thinking outside the box and operating at a different park or location within the city.
You, are there any available locations that are still available now that you would encourage us to apply for, even though the season has already started? I'm interested in Smith Park.
Right. So I would say I would say please reach out to our office. I would have to look on the list and see if there's anything in Smith Park. I don't think it is, but yeah, I would again reach out to our office now. We're here every day just to see if there's currently a concessionaire at a particular park, and then we would do some research. We would check and see if the park supervisor or the community was interested in a concessionaire at that park, if they had an idea of, oh yeah, we were looking for a concessionaire that carried a particular menu item, and that there's space in the park, then we would definitely start the process of interviewing and communicating with the park district. So, yep. That for a particular park at this point, I would say you probably have to reach out to our office and talk with us.
If there's no resident requirement, does the business have to be registered with the city of Chicago?
Well, you mean to have a business license from the city of Chicago? No,
Yeah, I
no,
think
it's no requirement.
we don't require a city
Business.
business license to get a park district permit.
No.
If a structure is built for the season, can it stay there or does it have to be removed when the season ends?
I would say, oh, let's see that.
That's really going to be a case by case basis. There's a lot of factors that get taken into consideration when you build on park property. If the intention is to build it and have it stay there year after year, then obviously it needs to be able to hold up to the weather and be safe enough to be on public property through the winter. This is particularly important for structures on the lakefront. I like to say Lake Michigan gets pretty angry in the winter. If you see, that's when we get our 4, 5, 6 foot waves. So it can really do some damage. And so we have to be conscientious about what's being built and whether or not it's safe. But there's no hard and fast rule about when a structure would have to come or go. It's just all about looking at that public safety aspect and what makes sense for the use of the park space.
And then we're getting, somebody is almost complete with their application. And they just say, excellent presentation, ladies. So you gave that person a lot of good info.
Good, thank you.
And then if someone's trying to connect to a specific park, is that like on the, is that contact info on the website? For example, this person at Smith Park?
So that information is not on the park concessions website, but I know that there is information on the Chicago Park District website for all the parks. So you
Yeah,
would
I
be
think
able
this
to.
is actually 2 different potential vendors. So maybe they're looking to connect with each other on a collaboration. Y'all would need to I don't know if you can exchange messages to each other through this webinar. But yeah, if you're looking for the park supervisor,
okay.
that would be listed on the park district website. And if you're just interested in applying for the program, then you would reach out to UCG for the concession process.
Okay, I'm sorry, I misunderstood the question.
I think that's what's going on. Yeah, they want to connect. Okay, this person wants to connect with the other person. Smith Park is on the map today.
When are final decisions made, and when do you find out if you have been awarded a location?
So if we look at the timeline going back to kind of how it's structured with the season, we post the NOA the end of November, the end of October. So I would say like the 3rd week of October, we start advertising the locations that will be available for the upcoming season. We give 6 weeks before the applications are due and on time. So the applications that are turned in on time are usually turned in toward the end of November. We interview applicants from November all the way until December or January. This past year, we received about 160 applications, so it took a while. So we interviewed all the way through, I would say January, about February. And then we make recommendations to the park district, and that takes about a month or so. And so we start letting people know that they have been awarded by the end of February, I would say. And so we've been in that process for a couple months, getting everybody set up and doing several presentations to the park district and about concessionaires and where they would operate. But I would say that if you start the process in October and you go through with the interviewing process, you start to get information from us by the end of February, March, the beginning of March.
Are we allowed to set our own hours and days of operations?
So the concessionaires come in and you are allowed to set your own hours and days within the confines of the park or beach location being open from 7 to 11. One thing I will say, a lot of times this gets tweaked. Once you start operating in the park or you learn about the sporting or summer events, a lot of times you get to know when it's busy, when's the best time to be around, start listening to the community. So if changes need to be made, we ask that you communicate with our office so we can let the park district know what's going on as well. But you are allowed to set your hours.
Could people choose multiple locations, like a first choice, then a second choice, then a third choice?
Yes, the application actually, I believe, is spaces for 5 choices. So you could do that. You could do 1 through your first through 5. So that gives us a better chance of trying to work with you. Because I mean, a lot of times I might get 20 applications and everybody's first choice is the same and it's 1 spot. So yeah, so it's kind of limiting. So it's 5 spaces.
Is the Riverwalk under your department?
No, it's not. No, it's not. Not the Riverwalk.
All right, any more questions? We've got about 6 minutes left, but we could always end early if there's no more questions left. Stephanie, is there a slide that had
The website.
yeah,
I think it's up now. Is it saying? So
final.
if you take down the chat, maybe. No.
Oh,
so
I
go-
see. Yeah, the parkconcessions.com. I see it on the
That's
bottom
from
right.
Yeah, but that's not up now.
Yes,
Go to the end, say.
I think it's the car. Right.
There we go.
Okay.
Yep.
Oh, it just went away.
Okay. Right there.
There we
There
go.
we go.
Yep.
All right.
And
A lot of
parkconcessions.com.
yeah, thank you. A lot of
Mhm.
thank yous. The 2 people who are interested in Smith Parks, the guy's giving his email.
Oh, where's the email?
All right, I think we can end it here. I will
Okay.
once again mention this webinar was recorded, so it should be up on BACP's YouTube page on Monday, which is youtube.com/Chicago BACP. Take a look there, and thank you both, Stephanie and CJ, and everybody have a wonderful weekend. Thanks a lot.
Absolutely.
Thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for your help today, both of you.
Yeah.